Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Have you or someone you love been a victim of a crime that's still unsolved? Crime Curious has teamed up with one of the top private investigation services in the Indiana and surrounding area. If you have listened to us long enough, you know that we do not seek out services or products that are meaningless to us or hold no real value. So you can trust us when we say that Corbett Investigations comes with decades of experience you won't find anyplace else. Corbett Investigations is run by a former homicide commander of one of the country's most successful homicide units, has put over 400 people in prison for homicide, handled over 1,100 death investigations, and solved 33 cold case murders. To be real with you, Mr. Corbett had a really difficult time telling us what we should highlight in this segment because he does not like to sound like he's bragging. Solving crimes has been his life's passion, and he has never done it for the accolades or recognition. He has a whole team behind his services that help him be so successful, as they specialize in things like blood stain analysis, ballistics, crime scene reconstruction, and forensic pathology, just to name a few. When you contact Corbett Investigations, you talk directly with Tim Corbett. He is hands-on with every case and can travel anywhere that's needed to get the job done. Corbett Investigations prides itself on honesty, truth, feet to the ground, real investigation work, and the strength to stand up to whatever is in the way of solving the crime. Corbett Investigations specializes in complex homicide cases, sex offenses, and criminal investigations that are old and new. Tim and his team have a reputation for finding witnesses and information that others could not. Although we hope none of our listeners ever need private investigation services, if you do, we recommend contacting Corbett Investigations and mention this segment on Crime Curious for a free consultation. Contact Tim Corbett today at 574-229-8115. You can also check them out on Facebook at Corbett Investigative Services, Inc. Thanks for listening, and now on to the show. Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Jason.
Jason, thank you for filling in for Megan. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Megan is on vacation for the first couple of weeks of the new year. She took her lovely daughter to Disney. So hi, Megan. She's a fan. She listens. So this is giving her fodder to listen to while she's gone.
You would think that if she's on this, she should be listening.
Oh, you would think, but you say that, but you're on here, and I know you don't listen to the episodes that you're not a part of. So
well, I don't.
You
listen,
should, though. We talk about you a lot.
I know. Sometimes I do, but I don't listen to the ones that I am a part of because I've lived it.
For sure. Yes.
Like I was there for it. I have a couple times because I was like, that's funny stuff.
If I didn't have to edit them, I wouldn't.
Right?
Probably.
I was there. It was good. We did a good job.
Although Megan will tell you that sometimes when she's having bad days, she goes back to the really funny episodes that are like Patreon only episodes, and it'll put her in a better mood. So I should probably try that, but I'm rarely in a bad mood, so that wouldn't come up very often.
Me too.
Yeah. Huh.
It's getting better.
We don't need to lie to the whole public. All right, we got to shake our gree-gree.
I don't have anything.
And squeak
Hold
it.
on.
Yep. Oh, you're new at this. Okay. There you go. And shake, rattle,
your
and
anal
roll.
beads.
First of all, that's a keychain. That's never meant to be a part of the gree-gree.
You keep your anal beads on a keychain?
No, you mistook my keychain for anal beads.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Good
There's
job.
the sack.
All right. We have a big thanks to a very special listener today. Thank you to Emma for sharing this recommendation. It's a really good one. This is the very bizarre case of The Corpse Bride.
That sounds like a Tim Burton movie.
It sure does. I'm pretty sure it is.
Right?
Yeah, it is. But I don't know if it was inspired or not by this case, but it's an undeniable case of mental illness. Absolutely. but it is just macabre enough to be very interesting.
Macabre. Good word.
Yeah, thank you. I looked it up in the thesaurus today.
I had to last year.
Kidding. I'm kidding.
I
I'm
literally
kidding.
didn't know what that meant until I watched Wednesday on Netflix. Like, I
Oh,
had no
really?
idea.
Yeah, I've loved that word for years. But all right, and especially given the era that this takes place in, Jay, if it happened today, we would just immediately recognize these are some mental health issues that went untreated. But it would still invoke some morbid curiosity, of course. And I'm glad people have morbid curiosity because I'm pretty sure that's why they keep coming and listening each week.
Fan base.
Mm-hmm. But this isn't really a case of murder, although crimes are certainly committed regarding the sanctity and handling of a corpse. There may have been some murder. We'll kind of get to it towards the end. But I think that what makes this especially provocative in terms of the type of case it is because of the era that it happened in which because this man was born in 1877, but this took place in like early to mid 1900s. So this, as I mentioned earlier, this is the commonly known case of the corpse bride. It's a very bizarre love affair that one man has with a corpse that he believes to have been his soulmate. So let's jump in.
Give a collective ew.
That is a good call. Everyone scrunched up their face.
Everyone's feeling a little icky.
Little bit of icky. Yes. So let's just dive into this puddle of ick together, shall we? George Karl Tanzler.
I always have 3 names.
Always. And they're spelled, it depends on what, wow, I lost words. Like my brain actually stopped working. You saw it happen. But it depends on which resource. Resource is the word I'm looking for. That you are looking in. Sometimes Karl is spelled with a K. Sometimes it's spelled with a C. I don't know, guys. It's spelled different ways. Also, I do know, though, that he was later known as Count Karl von Cosel. Because, of course, he's going to make himself a count. Because Count Karl.
Point yourself one.
Who does not? He does. And you'll figure out in a little while, it'll make more sense.
Castle for that.
Well, it'll make more sense in a bit. I remember I said mental illness was definitely at play here. I mean, if I'm ever to be a count, which I don't know if women can be, I haven't looked it up, but I want von to be in my name.
Right.
So I love that he's Count Karl von Cosel. And that is with a C, so perhaps his Karl is with a C as well. Regardless, he was born February 8th, 1877 in Dresden, Germany. He grew up in the German Empire, but does end up in Australia just before the outbreak of World War I. So during his childhood in Germany and later while traveling briefly in Italy, Karl started to become visited by visions of the dead, especially an ancestor known as Countess Anna Castina von Cosel. So that's his ancestor. So that's where he gets the, I am Count von Cosel later in life.
Did he have this ancestor? Did they actually exist?
That is a question that I could not definitively find proof of to where I could say matter-of-factly that, yes, there was lineage to this countess or not. I believe that it is possible, but he saw visions of this woman and she told him that she was an ancestor, okay? And during these visitations, Countess Anna revealed the face of his true love. An exotic, dark-haired woman, all right? There wasn't a name attached. She was just a beautiful, dark-haired woman, and this countess says, this is your soulmate, okay? This started in early childhood. So as I mentioned, and I see you looking at me, and I will do some explaining, I don't think that it's a secret to people that I absolutely am not here to say that people do not get visits from across the veil. Absolutely. And that does typically It's very frequent in childhood, and then through maturity, we lose that ability, and then later in life, it comes back should you open yourself up to that. Okay, so this part's not weird to me, honestly. And the fact that it started in childhood leans itself to more typical development than actual mental illness at that point in time. Even the revealing of a possible soulmate in visions and things like that. Okay, I'm not discrediting that part. It's just later it gets to be a little much. So
I'm not discrediting the fact that this
Countess.
No,
Well, he later becomes Count Karl. Karl. He's just Karl right now.
Karl may have communicated with an ancestor as a child.
Absolutely.
Post-mortem. Well,
their post-mortem,
right,
not his
sorry.
post-mortem. Yep.
Across
the veil.
The part I found weird is that they were trying to play matchmaker when he was a child.
No, I didn't get that impression. I got the impression that he was asking questions of, does he have a soulmate? Do they exist? And who is this? And was then having visions of just this exotic dark-haired woman, which, very easily could have met an exotic dark-haired woman. And he does, but we'll get to it. Free will is everywhere in our life's journey. And so even our ancestors who might want to give us possibilities in the universe, we still have the free will to go off track or go on track as we see fit. Nothing can interfere with that. Not our spirit guides, not our ancestors, nothing.
I only wish that one of my ancestors would have warned me about a dark-haired beauty when I was a child.
But
steer clear, child.
However, had that happened, that would have been interfering.
Blah, blah, blah.
Right? And then you wouldn't have your daughter. So it worked out to the way it was supposed to, as it always does.
Stick to the script.
What we know about his time, remember I mentioned that he was in Australia, right? Just before World War I. From what we can gather, a majority of his childhood was under the German Empire. But then he's in Australia. And we know that he was in Australia because randomly there is a publication that is called the Rosicrucian Digest. And actually, it's a mystical order publication, still in publication today. And there was a autobiography that was published called The Trial Bay Organ, a product of wit and ingenuity by Karl von Kassel. Remember, later in life, Karl becomes Karl von Kassel. And so he published in an April 1939 article or autobiography, shall I say, in this Rosicrucian Digest. And he gave details about his stay in Australia before his intermittent time during the Great War, as also his subsequent return to Germany after the war. So this is from that publication. This is all we know about his time there. It said, many years ago, this is a direct quote, Karl von Kassel traveled from India to Australia with the intention of proceeding to the South Sea Islands. He paused in Australia to collect equipment and suitable boats and to become acquainted with prevailing weather and sea conditions. However, he became interested in engineering and electrical work there. He bought property, boats, an organ, and an island in the Pacific, so that he was still in Australia at the end of 10 years. So he stayed there for 10 years. He had just begun to build a trans-ocean flyer when the war broke out and the British military authorities placed him in a concentration camp for safekeeping, along with many officers that were from India and China who were prisoners of war. Later, he was removed to Trial Bay to a castle-like prison on the cliffs, and there the work in his narrative was accomplished. At the end of the war, no prisoner was permitted to return to his former residence. So all that land that he had bought in Australia, he couldn't return to. They were shipped to a prisoners exchanged in Holland. When Karl von Kassel was released, he set out to find his mother, from whom he had not heard from since the beginning of the war. He found her safe, and he remained there with her for 3 years, witnessing the chaos that followed in the wake of the war. Finally, his mother suggested that her son return to his sister in the United States. Okay, so this account, from what we can tell, was accurate because there was another article published, or not article, another document that was published that confirmed, it was by another person that confirmed I was with Count Karl von Kassel in a sailboat, and it provided other information about the Germans in Australia during World War I. There are some connections that we can reasonably say his autobiography was perhaps mostly accurate about his time there. I bring this up because it is of my opinion, and my opinion only, that it's very possible, being a prisoner of war at this time, this is where the trauma comes in, and where we then start to see the change in his brain structure that led to what is obviously mental illness later on. Yeah.
Also, some possibility of disease.
Oh, sure.
That could have impacted his mental health.
100%.
From back
yes.
then, being in a concentration camp with just the time and place.
Pre-war, he was most definitely of sound mind and spirit, at that time.
So I'm not a huge history buff. You said he was born in 1875.
1877.
Okay. And World War I started in...
Okay, so World War I started July 28th, 1914.
Okay.
Until November 11th, 1918.
So he's like 37 years old. The onset of World War I when he was in Australia.
Yes. And so I think that things were fine. He had plans. He had been in Australia for 10 years. He was really trying to build things for himself. And then, then things didn't go well. But he lived. He survived. But he did go to the United States. So in the 1920s, he actually met and married a woman named Doris Schaefer. Together they had 2 children, Aisha Tanzler and Clarissa Tanzler. And actually, poor Clarissa, it's with a T, not an S. Clarissa, she died of diphtheria at the age of 10 in 1934. Karl emigrated from the United States from Germany in 1926, sailing from Rotterdam on February 6, 1926 to Havana, Cuba. From Cuba, he settled in Zephyr Hills, Florida, where his sister had already emigrated, and was later joined by his wife and 2 daughters that I mentioned earlier. Leaving his family behind in Zephyr Hills in 1927, he took a job as a radiology technician at the U.S. Marine Hospital in Key West, Florida. And that is when he changed his name, Karl von Kassel. So he is a radiology technician called Karl von Kassel in Key West, Florida, at a hospital. Okay? And he's paying tribute to the ancestor that paid him frequent visits through visions when he was younger. 3 years after he began working at the hospital as a radiology technician, not a doctor, by the way, as I've seen in a lot of ill-researched reports. Some even called him Dr. Karl von Kassel. He was not a doctor. He was a radiology technician.
So in the late 20s, I'm not sure how up to par the tech was for radiology technicians.
Oh, yeah, they had x-rays and things like that. I mean, that's how they're diagnosing tuberculosis.
Right, but as far as, not being exposed to it or...
Oh, I don't know that they protected themselves well.
I don't think they wore the big lead vests.
Did you just kick the whole
I
table?
Did. I shook
you
this
all right?
room.
If you guys heard that, I can't edit that out.
We're going to need a bigger table at some point.
We really do. I know it's on the list. No, I agree with you. I think he was exposed to plenty of radiation.
So far, several things that could be contributing to his demise of his mental state.
Yes, I agree completely. I don't know if he claimed to be I shouldn't say that. I do know that he did try to personify a doctor.
He claimed to be a count.
He did.
So it stands to reason he claimed to be a doctor.
Very possible, but he really was not. And as he's working, and keep in mind, his family is in Zephyr Hills, Florida. He's working in Key West.
Which is a nice resort.
It's a very nice.
It's all inclusive.
It is a really nice place. Probably even in the early 30s during the Depression.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably still better than any place else. No, I agree. But on April 22nd, 1930, a Cuban-American woman by the name of Maria Elena Milagro de Hayos was brought to the hospital by her mother for examination. I'm only going to call her Maria Elena from now on. Do not ask me to repeat the rest of those.
That was impressive.
Tanzler became enamored with Maria Elena, and he took an overly keen interest in her care despite not having any idea on how to treat tuberculosis, which is what she was eventually diagnosed with. Maria matched the description of the tan-skinned, dark-haired beauty that was described to him by his visitor, ancestor. And so in his mind, this was to be his soulmate. By all accounts, Maria Elena was viewed as a local beauty in Key West. I've seen pictures. She's very, very pretty.
Do they describe her age?
She's younger, okay. She's also married, okay.
So she's not like a child.
No, she's not a child. No, she was married in February.
He's like 50 at this point.
Mm-hmm. And she's not. She is like late 20s, okay. She was very married. They married in April 1926, 4 years prior to her TB diagnosis. She married a Luis Mesa. The couple were to have a child together, but sadly, Maria miscarried. And because of that, it's reported that Luis left her and moved to Miami because he's a shitbag, apparently. And
that's where shitbags go.
Yes, Miami. No, but they never legally divorced. So here she is 4 years later. She's sick with tuberculosis. Her mother is bringing her into this Key West hospital. She's known as a local beauty, but she's also not legally divorced, because how can you legally divorce someone who runs off to Miami after you have a miscarriage as if you're damaged goods?
You're going to telegraph the divorce paper?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Pigeon.
They weren't going through that pigeon carrier.
Pigeon carriers, they don't last long in Florida.
No, it's far too hot. So now in 1930, she is essentially dying from TB, and she has a radiology technician fall instantly infatuated with her, and he begins posing as a doctor as if he could treat her. TB, as we all know, is not treatable, right, at this time. And so, sadly, it does claim almost all of Maria's family, except I think 2. Don't quote me on that, but it was such a small amount of people that actually survived from her family. Everyone else contracted TB and died as well, including her. But before she passes away, and it's very obvious that she's going to, Karl von Kassel starts treating Maria Elena in her home by way of stealing supplies and equipment from the hospital. You're not supposed to do that, sir.
And he's just taking random equipment because it's not like he knows what he's doing.
Right. X-rays. I think he's trying to monitor if it's shrinking in her lungs or not. That's a guess, Jay. I don't know what he's taking. First of all, he's named himself Count.
Was the Count with a K?
It's not. It's still with a C. It's still with a C. And he's taking remedies. He is taking herbal tinctures. He is taking X-rays.
Mouth suppressors.
Everything that he can. Cotton balls. I don't know. He's taking it all.
Grippy slippers.
And not only the grippy slippers. They don't care if you steal those.
Probably.
But he's even bought her clothing and jewelry and gifts and professed his love to her. What is not documented in history is that we have no evidence that Maria ever returned that love. This poor girl is dying from TB. I don't know that she would have even been cognizant of what she was saying while he is professing his love to her. And I think she's really probably like, out of all the people that could fall in love with me, this Count who's pretending to be a doctor is it.
And did she probably believed he was a doctor?
Maybe. I'm sure there was a part of her that wanted to believe so. He was at the hospital.
The doctor's going to take care of me in my house.
Yeah. First, Luis dumps her because she miscarried a child. A very common thing, by the way.
Dickhead.
And yes, God, what a tool. And now and she's too pretty for this. You know, she's too good for this. Now she has this X-ray technician that is just fallen off the rails mentally, who thinks he's a count, and lo and behold, thinks that this is his soulmate, probably wonders why his ancestor didn't mention that she would be dying when they first met one another. But life is funny like that.
Even in the 30s, guys just don't see the red flags.
I do.
You just wanted it so bad.
I'm guessing that women didn't either.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
there had to have been a red flag about Luis, but yet here we were,
I don't know.
And about letting Karl, the Count Karl, come into the home to treat her.
And Carl's wife and kids are still
They are still happily
hanging out at the resort.
in a whole. No, they're not at Key West. Remember, they're way back in Zephyr Hills.
Zephyr Hills,
Yeah.
right?
So, I mean, they have no idea that any of this is going on. In several different resources, though, I did read various points in time through all of this. His family basically disowned him. But his wife comes back into the picture later. So I think it was more of he's on his own journey in Key West, and there's very little we can do about it right now. That's where we're at this time. But suffice to say, he is obsessed with Maria. Now, she does die of tuberculosis at her parents' home in Key West on October 25th, 1931. They met in the spring of 1930. So this went on for quite a bit of time where he was pretending to treat her and try to help her get better and all this stuff. Karl paid for her funeral. With the permission of her family, he also commissioned the construction of an above-ground mausoleum.
Now, they had to do that in Key West,
Yes. Yes, they did. But he paid for it and constructed it. And he visited this mausoleum almost every night. Allegedly using stolen supplies from the hospital, he continued to inject her body with formaldehyde in an attempt at preserving her. I know.
Again, a collective ew.
Ew. Uh-huh. This mausoleum, by the way, it had a door to which Karl is the only one to have said to have had the key. Which makes sense. He is the one that paid for it, right? So, I mean, I guess I would have probably given her parents a key. But if he's trying to preserve her body, he's not letting anybody else in there.
I'll start taking shots in the dark at why he's preserving her body.
We'll get to that collective ew moment later. Okay. One evening in April 1933, so about a year and a half after Maria's death, Count von Karl, that's just what I'm going to call him now. It's
Count Karl.
He's just Count Karl.
Captain Karl.
He crept through the cemetery where Elena was buried and removed her body from the mausoleum. Carting it through the cemetery after dark on a toy wagon of all things.
Like a little red radio flyer?
A radio flyer, Jason. That is what I'm telling you. How awful is this? I don't mean to laugh. This is horrible. But
so this guy's got this.
All that's missing is the red balloon.
Preserved, right?
He just needs the red
preserved balloon. Body that's probably in a fancy dress that he picked out for her.
Yes.
As he visited her in the mausoleum over and over again, preserving her with formaldehyde.
I know. It's awful. And he transports her to his home. He reportedly said that Elena's spirit would come to him when he would sit by her or her grave, and he would serenade her corpse with a favorite Spanish song.
Aww.
He also said that he would often tell her, that she would often tell him to please take her away from this grave. So you see, he was just fulfilling his soulmate's wish. By the way,
can never make him happy.
Not even in death. Jason, just so you know, you can't even satisfy a woman in death.
I built you this nice mausoleum, and you're not even happy with it.
Not even happy about it. You want to be taken away from it. For the record, just if anybody wants to know, your spirit doesn't care what happens to your physical body after death. If anything, if she really was sitting there, she was probably like, Karl, it's time to let me go. What you're doing is a disgrace to my human form.
It's icky.
It's icky, and I'm stuck here as long as you're obsessed with me. So can we say goodbye now? Because, I've got ancestors waiting, and, the whole holy grail is just waiting for me. Yeah.
She needed to track down his Countess ancestor and be
Right,
like, listen.
make this right.
You screwed the
Countess
pooch on this
Anna,
one.
you did.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. You were so wrong.
You were so far off.
You got this wrong.
Samsonite.
This is why you shouldn't interfere. So, as the inevitable decomposition happens, Count Karl attached the corpse's bones, with piano wire, and then fitted the face with glass and glass eyes. He also used plaster of Paris. So it's a type of rough paper mache, if you will, Jay. That's a plaster of Paris. It's not great. It's not a great look. Karl,
is there pictures?
There are. You can look if you look up the corpse bride at your own discretion on your own algorithms, people, not on mine. You can see photos.
Gotta use the incognito tab
of the corpse bride. Yes, as you should. Megan always talks about how you taught her that. And I skipped a part. So he replaces her facial skin essentially with silk cloth that was soaked in wax and plaster of Paris. That's how he constructed a new face, and then put glass eyes in there.
Like over her skull.
Yes. Yes, sir. After decomposition.
That took
time.
Special kind of guy to.
Attentive?
Yeah.
Can't even get a back rub. But this chick, 2 years after she dies, has someone reconstructing her entire body from her bone structure.
Did he? I don't know if he had a good photo of her that he was trying to just get it just right.
I think he was using his memory.
He was
using his soul.
That she had skin again.
Yeah, skin. If you can call silk cloth soaked with wax and covered with plaster of Paris. Let's talk about the hair, though.
He puts Buffalo Bill to shame.
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. He puts most men to shame, honestly. No one's this attentive.
He's trying hard.
As the hair fell out of Elena's decomposing scalp, he fashioned a wig from her hair. And actually, he even obtained some hair from her mother as well.
Was she
dead
too?
Figure out. Well, that's just it. I looked into it. I can't figure out.
Like, how's that work? Does he go over and be like, hey.
Can I cut some of your hair off? And
it's for a project.
Don't know.
Something I'm working on.
Couldn't find the answer.
I'm not sure what's worse, if he did that or if he dug up her mother and was like, I need more hair that's just like hers.
At this point in time, I put nothing past Count Karl.
Right.
He could have done it all. All right. So Count Karl then fills this poor girl, Elena's abdominal and chest cavity with rags to keep the original shape. And he went ahead and dressed her remains in stockings, jewelry, gloves. And he kept the body in his bed, Jay. He kept the body in his bed. He did use copious amounts of perfume.
That was my next question.
Yep, disinfectants and preserving agents to mask the odor and to forestall the effects of decomposition. You can only mask that
for so long.
So long. Yeah, this is a deep love. This is a deep love that you and I will never know.
Yeah.
We love our significant others, and hell, I mean, a lot of our family members, but not this kind of love. This is a different level. A different dimension of love that is unknown to most of us.
And she didn't even appreciate it.
She didn't. She really, I still believe that she may have come to him after she passed, but I don't think it was to say, get me out of this mausoleum. I think he was misinterpreting, and she was saying, get out of my mausoleum.
Exactly. Not get me out.
Not get me out.
Get out.
You get out. Sir.
Yes.
Please. Let me die.
Good
Just
day,
rest in peace.
Good day, sir.
And you know that she was like, oh, don't do that.
Right.
No, that's not what my eyes looked like. Quit. That's what I would have been like. Like, no, that's wrong. My nose is not that large.
And it probably didn't do her justice because he...
Oh, she was beautiful.
Yeah. And he probably made the after one like pasty white.
Oh, yeah, there's not a whole lot of... I don't know if he painted, because she was dark-skinned.
He seemed very dedicated. Maybe he got some...
Paint.
Coloring.
Maybe, because the pictures are in black and white, of course. So I can only see that it looks really light, but I don't know. In October 1940, 7 years after Count Karl had stolen Maria's body from her tomb, and 9 years in total after her death, because remember, he visited her for like 2 years in the mausoleum. Elena's sister, Florinda, she had heard some rumors of Count Karl sleeping with the disinterred body of her sister. So, like the curious cat that she is, she thought maybe it's time to pay Count Karl a visit because, it's been 9 years and this just doesn't seem right. And what prompted that visit is that neighbors started to report that they saw him dancing with what appeared to be a corpse in front of an open window, like at night. So there's like light and, you're just picturing these silhouettes of people. And at the time, it wasn't known. It was just speculated that it was a corpse, but it looked like a solid, large doll. Okay, it's something that's not moving. He's not even trying to hide it. No, because I don't think that he thought in these moments that he was doing anything ill-willed. Florinda, she goes and she knocks on Karl's door. She wants to talk to him about the rumors, to which, he denies. But she could tell by both the crazed look in his eye and, the smell of his home, and the overall nature of the rumors were probably true. So she just went ahead and notified the authorities. Like, you know what? I'm no investigator, but I think I have enough information. Maybe I need to take this to someone who is. Pardon me if you heard that, because I just...
Very specific rumors.
Very, very specific.
Like, hey.
Not just like, hey, he's kind of having a hard time with her death 9 years later. And
he's dancing with what appears to be her skeleton in the front window. Mm-hmm. Now, if other than some people walking by, who knows what kind of community he lived in or neighborhood, but the rumors of him doing other things than dancing, I feel like he may have had to, maybe he told somebody or made comment of, listen.
We get to it in just a minute, Jay.
Oh, boy.
There's a place that the rumors start. Here's the thing. The authorities come, and they're like, wow, yeah, these rumors, they appear to have some girth to them. Much like poor Maria Elena's body that shouldn't have any anymore at this point in time. So he's arrested, he's detained. He was psychiatrically examined and found mentally competent at that time to stand trial of wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorization. That was the official charge. All right. After a preliminary hearing on October 9th, 1940, at the Monroe County Courthouse in Key West, Karl Tanzler was held to answer on the charge, but the case against him was eventually dropped at that time because he was interviewed by another psychologist who declared that he was mentally incompetent. He was actually released as the statute of limitations for the crime itself had expired because he took it some 9 years before, or 7 years before. At this point in time, it would have been 8 years before. Shortly after the discovery of Miss Maria Elena's body by authorities, physicians and pathologists examined it and even put it on public display at the Dean Lopez Funeral Home, where as many as 6,800 people viewed it. I told you, we are a macabre group here on Earth. And then it was eventually returned to the Key West Cemetery, where the remains were buried in an unmarked grave in a secret location to prevent further tampering by Count Karl. Her body was said to have been dismembered and placed in a metal box, but portion of the original memorial plaque commissioned by Karl Tanzler and affixed to Maria Elena's mausoleum there, they've been reassembled and are on display at a historical museum in Key West. I know.
It's a weird place. I've been there.
It is.
It's right behind like New Orleans. It's weird.
Now, here's the thing. The facts underlying the case in the preliminary hearing drew much interest from the media, mostly like the Key West Citizen and the Miami Herald. And it created quite a sensation at the time, both regionally and nationwide. How the rumors started is that, Count Karl, he was going through town buying dresses and jewelry for his wife. But everyone, remember, his real wife did exist, but nowhere near here. She was in Zephyr Hills. His neighbors, and he'd lived there now for many a year, never knew him to have a wife. So they really started to speculate. Like, he is buying all this, but he lives alone. But yet we see him dancing with this very odd-shaped thing at night. So that is where I'm sure there's more that's undocumented that he was saying. I am sure of it. And I know the lingering question. Everyone wants to know, was he engaging in necrophilia with his soulmate? Though not reported a lot of the research, most notably by the authors of Harrison and Swicegood, who attended the trial, have revealed evidence of Count Karl's necrophilia with Elena's corpse. Two physicians, Dr. DePoo and Dr. Foraker, who attended the 1940 autopsy of Elena's remains, recalled that there was a vaginal tube that had been inserted in the vaginal area of the corpse that allowed for intercourse. Others have since contended that no such evidence of necrophilia was presented, but the physicians kind of felt that the presence of the tube in that area is really the proof that needed to exist.
Oh, Karl.
Karl.
Come on, man.
Because if those aren't your intentions, there's no reason to go through the act of creating such a orifice. Because I will point out there was no such orifice so we can't even have the argument of he was trying to make her just as intact and anatomically correct as a human would be. I'm going to point out that there was no such orifice for, say, the anal cavity.
Kudos, Karl.
So, some have viewed this as being eccentric but romantic at the same time.
No.
Can we just say creepy and gross?
I know that we had the disclaimer before we started recording that this is for the general public.
Yes.
So you can edit if necessary.
All right.
Did she have any kind of tube inserted in her
facial region?
Her mouth
No.
that was what he recreated as a mouth?
No. It was only mentioned in her vaginal area.
So he's a gentleman.
Sure. That's what we're going to say. He was a gentleman necrophiliac.
He really loved her.
At
least he respected her.
He obviously did. The other thing I want to point out is that these doctors just simply testified to these things, and they're just from the preliminary examination, and they're just in the transcripts. There's not actually any photographs or anything that happened in that particular area from the autopsy. So it's possible that maybe it's not true. It's
definitely true.
It's definitely true, you
but
guys.
I'm pretty sure. But listen, based on what we've just discussed, there was a moment when Karl was probably pondering it. He's like, "No, that's too far.
And then
that's crossing a line."
He got lonely. Then as time passed, he was like, I've come this far.
Right.
Let's just keep going.
In for a penny, in for a pound, Karl.
Right. And boy, was he. Yeah. Oh. Poor choice of words.
Karl.
In for a pound. Oh, God. Why does his name have to be Karl? It makes it somehow even more true. No offense. I know a Karl. They're great.
I don't.
They're great people.
The only Karls I can think of is Karl from Shameless.
Oh, yeah.
And Captain Karl from the Pee Wee Herman show.
That's funny. Yeah.
So.
No, I know actual Karls. Wonderful people. Probably not into necrophilia, but we don't stink kinks. But we do that one. You can't do that. That's desecration of a corpse.
It's a crime.
It's a crime.
We kink shame crimes.
We do every time. She did not give her consent. And I still maintain that she was not giving consent in spirit across the veil.
I'm pretty sure his ancestors screwed up big time.
I know. You know that she's there. Listen.
She's watching like, no,
No,
Karl,
that's Karl. That's not what
her.
I meant. Dang it. Damn it, Karl. now I'm going to have to go back to schooling for being ghost guides for the next 10,000 years.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Back on track.
Yeah.
They did establish that he was
two
mentally
doctors
ill
testified to. Well,
or
yes.
criminally insane.
No, they did.
What
they
terms
did.
did they use?
He was deemed incompetent to stand trial, and then by the time that he would have been deemed competent, the statute of limitations had run out. And so for that particular charge of, remember, I read you the charge. It was an interesting wording.
It wasn't just desecration of a corpse.
Because he moved it. It was essentially, It was wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorization.
That seemed like the bare minimum.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
essentially.
After what they found later on.
But I think there was some pity taken on him.
Stealing a corpse is like the least of their worries with Karl.
Well, also, it took him 7 years to realize that he stole her.
And
at that point, she really wasn't a corpse anymore.
I mean, this was the 30s.
She was
correct?
paper mache.
Ew, that's gotta itch. This was the 30s, correct?
Yes.
So I assume, by definition, it probably hasn't changed a whole lot legal terms.
Oh, there would have been more charges against him in today's standards.
Right, but incompetent to stand trial, isn't by definition, does that imply that he doesn't understand right from wrong or the laws?
Yes, doesn't understand the laws that he broke. Well,
because he's like, no, it's my soulmate.
Yeah, I think that
I built that mausoleum. I can take it down.
If you're a psychologist and you're like, well, listen, my ancestor came to me when I was 7 and told me that my soulmate was going to be a exotic dark-haired woman. And so when I met her, I knew she was my soulmate. And I then posed as a doctor and stole all these supplies and tried to treat her for an incurable disease for a year and a half, declared my love for her, built her monastery. It all adds up.
But tell me if I'm wrong, but mentally ill and incompetent to stand trial
are two different things. Yes. And they initially...
But he's clearly mentally ill.
Initially, he was found competent to stand trial.
Right.
But then another assessment takes place, and they discover he, in fact, is not. That's how that happened.
Those.
I do think that if he hadn't known what was right from wrong, he probably wouldn't have tried to deny it to the sister when she came. He wasn't weekend at Bernieing her. So he was not taking her out, is what I mean.
Right.
He was keeping her hidden. He knew he wasn't supposed to be doing that. So I'm in agreement with you that I think he probably could have stood trial. I think he understood what he was doing was nefarious and not deemed well by society's standards, certainly. Because otherwise, why didn't he weekend at Bernie's her?
Yeah, just carry her around.
Put her in the car. Come on, honey, we're going shopping.
Yeah.
Feel like some jewelry today?
Sit her in the booth at the diner with him.
Yeah. That, I think for me, that's kind of the difference where I'm like, I question that. Yeah. But I think given the time, I think they're like, this is unheard of. He's lived with this body for 7 years in his home that he carted in a little red wagon. We're assuming it's red. It's the only other color totally I can picture. It was.
Wasn't
it like Ford cars at the time that were only black? They were only made in the color of black, right? When they were I think wagons started as only red.
Oh, they're totally red
in my mind. Well,
he couldn't find a wheelbarrow. Something a little more practical.
Well, I think she was a petite little woman and just fit in the red wagon. I don't know. I'm not sure what resources he had available to him.
I'm a little disappointed he didn't just like pick her over his shoulder and run out the cemetery.
Yes. No.
Because that would have been...
I think her body... Remember, by that point in time, she had been gone almost 2 years. Her body was in a very fragile state, even with all the formaldehyde that he had been injecting. So I think he had to be delicate with his removal strategy. Weirdest conversation. You know
this
what?
Is right up there.
I can't even say it's the weirdest conversation we've ever had, but it is.
It's in the rankings.
I would think so. We're hypothesizing about the removal of a 2-year dead corpse. Yeah, that is odd. I have more about his life, though.
Oh, good.
Yes, Karl doesn't end here. Because remember, he doesn't go to prison, guys. I mean, he's treated in a mental hospital and released. So essentially, after being found not competent to stand trial, of course, they go to a mental hospital. Then he's released. In 1944, he moves to Pasco County, Florida, close to Zephyr Hills, where, his family lived. And that's where he writes an autobiography that appeared in the pulp publication called Fantastic Adventures in 1947. I think he's calling his time
It was quite
poor
an
Elena
adventure.
a fantastic adventure. His home was near his wife, Doris, because remember, they had never divorced. He still has 2 children out there and a wife. Doris did help support him in his later years. He received United States citizenship in 1950 in Tampa and separated from, because of course they took her body and now he can no longer be with her. Karl used what was described as a death mask to help create a life-sized effigy of Elena and lived with it until his death at the age of 75 on July 3rd, 1952. You heard that correctly. His body was discovered on the floor of his home 3 weeks after his death, and he died under the name of Karl Tanzler, not under Count Karl von Kassel. Yeah. But it was, his body was said to have been found in the arms of Elena's effigy.
Can we define effigy?
So it's essentially he has built another doll.
Okay,
Yeah, just this time has none of actual Elena.
That's a step
So
in the right
that's
direction.
better. Could we have not just done that from the beginning, Karl?
It would have saved a lot of time.
Karl,
and effort.
buddy. Yeah. And so he was also found to have been discovered behind one of his organs. Remember I said that he liked to play the organ? Not one, like a kidney. Behind the musical instrument, the organ.
Yes, I got it. It just sounded funny to me in the moment.
Now, there has been some tantalizing gossip that and I think this is just folklore, guys. This is probably not real, but I got to let you know that there are rumors on the street that he had Elena's body switched with that effigy. So the person, the body that he really did die with was the actual corpse of Elena. But that's just all sensationalized because the authorities were not going to release her real body. Right?
Pretty sure.
Not even then. Right?
Pretty sure.
Not even for some money?
I mean,
right?
The chances aren't zero.
Agreed. That is what we should say. The chances aren't zero. Another thing, though, the story of Karl Tanzler and Elena would be reproduced in pulp magazines in the years following his death, with various parties adding new details to the case. One article that was written by a Mitch Felder in 1982 tells of how renovation workers found a note allegedly written by Tanzler, so when they were renovating the house that he was treating her in, her parents' house. And in that note, he allegedly confessed to have killed Elena by poisoning her. And this was what it said. It was to have said, "She died because I gave this to her mercifully. I mixed the root of wolfsbane with aconite diluted. It was palatable, and my loved one departed this miserable world on October 25th, 1931. Suffer no more, sweet Elena. I have sent you to the angels with my golden elixir." So that is where I leave us. Allegedly,
she was suffering.
Renovators, I wouldn't be surprised if this detail was accurate. He was treating her, right?
Right.
She was very much suffering. He had seen many people of this time had seen people suffering and dying of TB. And so even knowing how to make that tincture, knowing that it would kill her, tells me it was probably a pretty popular concoction for this exact purpose. And so he said, it was palatable, and my loved one departed this miserable world. Suffer no more, sweet Elena. I think
this
he
whole
probably
episode,
could
that's the thing I have the least issue with.
I agree. What a surprising
that's
twist.
The most normal thing that's happened to this guy.
Yes, that he mercifully helped assist in the death of his, who he saw as his soulmate. We don't know if poor Elena really felt that way. This poor girl, she probably couldn't stand him, but
I feel like this
was
is
too sick to say no.
She's coughing up along literally.
Yes. And
he's
here he keeps showing up every day.
Yeah.
to treat her. I don't know, but so it's possible that he
I'd like to think that she loved him back and they had this nice little romance before she died. But realistically, it was probably a lot creepier than that.
I agree. I think realistically, it was like, oh my God, this is the only doctor that I have to try to save me. And then once it becomes apparent that there's just is no saving her. And remember, the rest of her family succumbed from it too. So I'm not entirely sure how many people there really were to step in his way, to stand in his way, right? Yeah. So that's another reason why I think it's very possible that the hair that he got for her wig was also from his mother, who had succumbed to TB as well. So that's where I leave you.
Awesome.
Thank you again, Emma, for this case. I know that I have perused it before, but I've never sat down to actually do any hardcore research on it. And fascinating. It really was. Macabre, gruesome, but fascinating all the same.
Yeah.
And May, first of all, I would like to speak to the Countess. Please don't actually appear to your loved ones.
You need to be a lot more specific.
Way more specific. Give us a name. Give us a date. Something if you can. I know communicating across the veil can be tricky, but let's not make that mistake again. And poor Elena, may you rest in peace, you beautiful soul. And finally.
Emma, I hope we did it justice for you.
Yes, I hope. She said it was a case that's always fascinated her. And truth be told, I happen to know Emma. She is one of my dear friend's nieces.
Yeah.
And so thank you for listening. And she requested it quite some time ago, and I'm finally getting to it.
A friend's niece of yours.
Oh, are we ready for a brain bath?
Yeah, because I feel filthy.
Yeah, as we all do. Let's just collectively release Count Karl from our memories. And
I think if I remember this next year, I think I'm going to rename my fantasy football Count Karl.
Count Von Karl.
Von Karl. Yeah. When someone asks, I'll be like, dude, Google it.
Google it. Google the corpse bride.
Google that on your work phone.
Yeah, exactly. See what pops up, man. Oh, boy. And, if they really were soulmates, at the end of it, when he finally did succumb to death, they met up there and she was like, what the fuck, man?
Right.
That's not how we were supposed to. That's not how we rehearsed it before we incarnated.
Or then he sees his actual soulmate and he's like, wait a second. I fucked up so bad.
So bad. I'm coming back again, aren't I? Dang it.
I got to do this again.
In the birth canal I go. I don't mean to laugh at my own joke, but I was just picturing all of it. Right. And just that probably is how it goes. Or may even in my
floating a spirit floating into the afterlife and sees his actual soulmate face to face or spirit to spirit, and she's like, Karl, where have you been? He's like, oh, God damn it.
Shoot, that's right. Not Elena, Sarah.
He's like, you look so different.
Dang it. It's really tricky down there in the physical. Shit. Anyway, I got a wonderful Christmas gift from my brother that I am now going to use as brain bath fodder for the next year, because it's amazing. And the picture on the front is amazing as well.
It's like a combination of Charles Manson and John Belushi on crack.
Yep, on that cover. And the title of this book is called Seriously Stupid Criminals. Yep, by Sinova Cantrell. And thank you for compiling this wonderful literary gold
masterpiece.
Yes, for us. So I'm just going to this is her author's note. I feel like I should read. Quote, as always, it's not nice to call someone stupid, but sometimes a person's behavior cannot be described any other way. This book is for entertainment only, so the names have been changed to protect the innocent, namely me. I did include some mugshots for those that were publicly available. They say laughter is the best medicine to get ready, so get ready for some laughter therapy. True Crime Edition. If you want to read more serious true crime stories, check out my other true crime books on Amazon. Sincerely, Sinova. So this girl, I feel like I should reach out to her because I don't think she understands. This is exactly what we do at the end of our crime shows, is give funny crime stuff. So this first one says, Chicago man shoots himself in the junk while robbing a hot dog stand. I think I maybe have covered this one before, but it is worth covering again, my friend, You've probably not heard it.
No, it doesn't sound familiar at all. But
A 19-year-old man tries to hold up a South Side hot dog stand on Halloween. The armed robber pressed a .38 caliber pistol to the head of one of the employees and demanded cash. All over a hot dog? Man, if you had just asked him for a hot dog, I bet he would have given it to you.
I think he wanted more than the hot dog.
Yeah. The two men gave up their wallets and cash from the stand. The wind blew the cash to the ground, and the thief knelt over, bad move, to retrieve it, then tried to flee the scene. Unfortunately, the gun dislodged from its place in the man's boxers, and when he tried to fix it, the trigger was pulled. The man fled the scene, but only made it across the street before collapsing into a bloody heap on the porch of a neighboring house. The police arrived on scene and retrieved the stolen cash, but a surgeon would have to retrieve the .38 bullet lodged in the man's manhood. He was arrested and the judge refused to give him bond once released from the hospital. Oh boy. Then she goes on to say, someone needs to give the guy a gun safety course and a good dose of common sense. To make this story more embarrassing, this young man liked to wear his jeans sagging around his backside. While he was in the process of reaching for the flyaway cash, a security video took a clear video of the man's boxer shorts. The newspapers claimed the man was identified by his underwear and the self-inflicted gunshot wound. His mama is so proud.
Right.
Just the
Wowzer.
irony. Like sometimes karma is just so ironic. You shoot your hot dog while you're robbing a hot dog stand. You know, that's when you know that you are off alignment with, and his guardian angels are going, no.
Right.
He
And
bends
didn't-
over.
and
Oh
he
dear
didn't even,
God, no.
Didn't really set the bar real high for himself. It's not like he was robbing a diamond store.
Nope. He saw a hot dog stand and was like, you know who I bet has some money?
I'll bet they got about $27 on him. The fuck?
56
Right.
cents.
Like, it's totally worth
That'll get me into the movies.
it. Right.
It's cool. Oh, Lord. Yeah.
He didn't even steal lunch. Like,
Nope.
Oh, give me all your money and 2 of those franks with mustard only, thanks.
Right. Hold the onions.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, God. All right. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you, Jason, for covering
My
for Megan.
pleasure.
I'm going to have you back again, really, because she's going to be gone for a couple weeks. She had to drive all the way to
While the
Florida.
cat's away.
I know. The mice will
Right?
play.
She's going to be so jealous.
And we are. And our bonus episode is really cool. Episodes. I mean, if you're not a Patreon, you really should be, because there's a ton of bonus content. And the Christmas present that we released for Patreons last month included our husbands. Like, you don't want to miss out on that. So you should click on the link in our show notes to join Patreon. And if you can't, we understand, and we will be back next week for you. So until next time, keep it curious.
Keep listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.